There. I think we're good, finally, to go.
Would you like to clap?
Yes, it's actually very helpful. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, clap, 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 clap.
I was together with you.
Not from my end. It was me clap, you clap, me clap, you clap, me clap, you clap. Not just in the sound, but as I was watching it.
I was together with Eric.
Well, the best part is I can edit it however I want, so even if you were together, I could do what I wanted. Well, you got to move, and now I got to move.
Yeah, so Eric, what's happened in your life?
I have moved into the city. I officially live in the city of Minneapolis for, what day is it? 5 days now. For the first time ever, I live in the city and not in the suburbs. I realized that was the same thing when I lived in Denver. I lived in Littleton the whole time, not in Denver proper.
Wow.
So, yeah. Big deal. Yep. So, yeah. This is the basement. It looks like a basement. My room is not at all put together yet. I realized I need a lot of shelves for my books. I have at least 7 totes worth of books. It might be more than that. It might actually be 8 or 9. But I need a lot of shelves. That's the picture of the bookshelf that I sent you. I have more books on there now. That's all my fiction books. And I have even more nonfiction. That's what happens when you just buy books and go through a master's program.
I have a TV in my room because we have too many TVs in our apartment. And I was going to buy a shelf to put it on. And then I, buy a cube shelf so I could put some of the, Walmart organization cubes in my shelf. I just never got to it, so the TV's just on the floor. It's not even plugged in.
Mine is. I have a TV as well in my room. I tried scanning the channels because it's an antenna. It's on an antenna. And I can't get channel 11, which is our NBC affiliate. But it's like, I had the problem in Coon Rapids too, where it'll scan the channels and then it won't do 11. And then you need to move the antenna into a different place. And then maybe you'll get 11, and if not, you need to move the antenna again. And sometimes when I was in Coon Rapids, I needed to be on the couch, and that was the only time that channel 11 would come in, is if I was on the couch. If I stood up at all, it would start breaking up. It's like, what is going on here? Just give me... I want to watch stuff. It's the only channel I need. All I watch is sports.
Yeah, our apartment came with a Roku TV, so we just have all of our Netflix, Prime, Hulu, Disney Plus, all of those connected to the TV, along with the Xbox and PlayStation, so we can do whatever we want on the TV that they provided for us. So that's why my TV just sits in my room.
For future use, I suppose. As I was moving in here, when Emily was helping me, she'd be like, what are you going to do with that? You could get rid of it. Do you need all this stuff?
That sounds like Emily.
There is a good chance I will need some of these things in the future. Like my microwave, which you are currently sitting on top of. It's like, you could get $20 for that microwave. I said, yeah, but then I'd have to pay $70 again when I need a microwave. I'll just hang on to it. I've already moved it back from Colorado. Or all my dishes. She didn't even have to move my dishes. It's a bunch of stuff.
All of my roommates and I had our own complete silverware set. And then we've also all collected some silverware. So there are 3 of us, and we basically have 4 complete sets of silverware. And both of my roommates had a silverware organizer. And so I put one in one of the drawers, and I filled it with just forks, and I had them open the drawer, and I was like, this is our silverware. And then as like a challenge to see how long it would take them to notice, I put the other organizer in a different drawer on a different part of the kitchen and filled it with the rest of the silverware. Someone opened it at one point and was like, you moved the silverware. It's like, no, that's everything except the forks.
I like that. When I moved the last of my stuff out of Coon Rapids today, and Dad and Faye were over there cleaning stuff and getting stuff ready for the sale. And Faye was like, do you need any dishes? Any of the dishes in there? Any of the silverware? It's like, no, I think I'm good. Well, do you need any of these utensils? And then, like, Dad opens the drawer. Need any of these? No, I got all this stuff. Because, like, I had a full set of things when I lived in Colorado because I lived by myself and needed my own things. This is part of the deal. When I moved back down to the cities, there were, like, comments from both parents about, like, living, like, as an adult or something. I don't remember them specifically, but it's like, I lived by myself in Denver for a while. Like 4.5 years I was in Denver, and for at least 2.5 of those I needed my own things. So I bought all my own things, and I lived on my own, and I paid rent to places, and I have lived as an adult on my own, and now I am back on my own.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with roommates, but...
Yeah,
like,
well, me too, but I guess technically I have always lived with people. Well, there was like in the apartment on campus at the seminary, I was by myself from April to August, so like 4 months 1 year. But then like the rest of the time on campus I was with someone, and then when I was in the basement, I was in the basement with a couple living upstairs who owned the house, and then I was in the farmhouse with 3 other people. So like I've always lived with people.
I have a cat now. I mean, I don't personally have a cat. My roommate has a cat, but I live with a cat.
And I live with a dog and a snake.
Ooh, don't like snake.
I have not seen the snake yet. It's apparently the heating lamp on the cage or the terrarium, whatever it is, it's not plugged in, so it's cold in there. So she is staying under the little fake plastic rock. Do you remember, what was it? Emily sent us a thing about reptile rocks, or what was the wording specifically? Do you remember this?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Someone from Northwestern posted in Facebook Marketplace that she had... Oh, I can't even remember what it was called. Reptile hides.
And it was just like rocks?
But they were rocks, and I was like, does she know this? And it was like $50. She had like 4 stones and a wood thing posted as reptile hides. And it took a long time for me to realize it is a place for reptiles to hide, not hides of reptiles. And I just want to be like, does this person know that reptile hides are actually like a thing? Also, you have 3 rocks and a piece of wood for $50.
Someone with a reptile probably thought that was a steal.
Oh my gosh. Just go out in the forest. But anyways.
Yeah, I live with a cat. She's little. Her name is Barbara. I call her Bab or Babs.
Barbara. The dog is named Muppet. It is a pit bull mix. I don't know what else is mixed. I found out today that apparently there's only like one insurance company that will provide homeowners insurance that also covers pit bulls.
That does not surprise me.
Have you had any pit bull experiences?
Every pit bull or like bully type breed that I've interacted with, I think has been just like an angel. There's one who used to come into work, my work in Ames. I quit my job.
But for the listeners.
Yeah, for the listeners, I quit my job.
This isn't our job. To the 6 people who listen.
Yeah, there was this dog who used to come in who I wouldn't call him like an angel or a sweetheart, but he was a recent rescue and he just didn't understand how big he was. So it's not that he was like mean or aggressive, he was just large. He was a bowling ball.
Yeah. The dog here isn't big either. It's a little smaller than Winston. Winston is our mom and stepdad's lab.
Winston's chunky.
That is true.
Or
no
lumpy.
No matter how much mom wants to say he's not.
No, he is overweight.
Yeah. Which, like, part of me was surprised because they, like, feed him the normal, like, standard food at the meals, like breakfast and dinner. But then he, like, eats a bone every day, and then, like, you mix in other treats and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I don't know if this was pre-COVID or post-COVID or whatever, but apparently Bruce was at the vet, and then he got called by the vet. It was like, we have a serious problem. Your dog is obese.
That's the Winston I know and love.
But now Mom has been taking him on walks, so he's been slimming a little bit, but has a ways to go.
Your dog is obese. I saw a dog today. So, for the listeners, I quit my job at a doggy daycare, and now I work for the census. So I'm an enumerator, so I go around, and people who haven't filled out the census, I'll show up at their house and be like, "Hi, I'm with the census. Can I do this questionnaire with you right now?" And I'll have them fill out the census. Well, I'll, like, read the questions to them. Walked up to a house today and there was a dog. Probably the best part of my day.
Nice. Not your unboxing of your lunch.
No, I did an unboxing of my lunch because I didn't have anything else to do.
An unboxing video on Snapchat just for me and Emily.
Yes.
So
I put my phone on my steering wheel and recorded myself.
My video isn't slanted, but this is the way the steering wheel is.
Yeah. It was a pretty good lunch. I never got to eating the yogurt because I was just too full with everything else in it. And for dinner, we had hot dogs.
Nice.
And probably more chips than a normal human should eat.
That might end up being me tomorrow. Probably not. I think I'm working on food consumption. So as of my birthday, that was my last day having sugar for at least until Thanksgiving. Because it has been helpful in the past to cut sugar for me, for my health. Just in general. I think probably for everyone, if you cut sugar, it'll be good. But like I have cheated a little bit. I've had pizza, which there's sugar in the crust and sugar in the sauce, but not like exorbitant amounts. And then I bought queso to eat tomorrow when I watch the NASCAR race. And there is a gram of sugar per serving, which again, not very much, but technically is breaking the sugar deal.
If you hear any weird sounds, it's probably the washer and dryer. I have my door closed, but the washer and dryer are outside my door.
Yeah, that was going here too. Plus we have creaky floors. That's what happens when you're in a house that's over 100 years old.
I'm on the 3rd floor, so no one's creaking above us. Oh, the 3rd floor is the highest floor. It's not like floors magically stop creaking after 3.
I mostly have lived in basements, I realized, or like lower levels. Like technically in Brooklyn Park I wasn't in the basement, but I was on the lower level. So that was... Champlin was only 1 floor, and I was on the 1st floor. We had a basement, but I wonder if I would have ended up moving into the basement if we'd stayed in Champlin. Like if you or Emily would have ended up in the room that I was in. Because you two were sharing a room before we moved. But anyways, so 1st floor and then lower level in Brooklyn Park. And then I was on the 1st floor, two out of the 3 dorms I was in at Bethel, and then lived in a basement in Denver, lived in a farmhouse, which was just one floor in Denver, in Coon Rapids for a year in the basement. So
Oh,
yeah,
you hear that crack? That was my ankle. That was a big spike.
Nice. That happens to me sometimes.
In my dorm, I lived on the 5th floor, but technically the ground floor was G, and then the next floor was 1. So technically I was on the 6th floor, but
Yeah.
floor 5.
There were no buildings at Bethel that were that tall.
I wasn't even on the highest floor.
Our tallest buildings were 4 stories.
I think we had 7 floors in our dorm. I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah. I mean, the Great Hall, our like concert venue, or it's not a theater, auditorium. That's a better word for it. But that was taller than 4 stories, but didn't have 4 stories of stuff. That's the only quiet place I could find at Bethel to study that wasn't the seminary library. I had 2 places I would go. You needed to get there before the doors locked, because you could get out, but you couldn't get in once the doors locked. But the stairwells to the Great Hall, when there wasn't stuff going on in the Great Hall, was the quietest place to be to study. Or I would go to the 4th floor of one of the further down academic buildings. I think it was psychology, offices and some classrooms up on that floor. But if you got there after 9, then there was no one up there, so you would just I would just sit on the floor in the hallway and do homework up there sometimes. But that was 2 quiet places on campus at Bethel.
My campus is much larger.
Yeah.
For
Plus
the first
our buildings
time,
closed at midnight. I think you have buildings that do
a
not do
lot
that.
of the buildings do close. So they'll have some security person come and lock several of the buildings, but if you're in them, they're not going to kick you out. But the physics building is where I spend a lot of time, or where I did last year, pre-corona. And it's connected to another building, which just never gets locked. So if you ever needed to get in the physics building and the physics building was locked, you could go in through this other building. But for the first time, not this past week, not this past Wednesday, but the one a week before that, I was on the roof of a building. So I'm in an observational astronomy class. We set the telescopes on top of the agronomy building. There's an observing station up there, because it's also one of the meteorology buildings.
And Iowa State has a meteorology program.
It does. We have a lot of programs.
Yeah, well, it's a state school. It's kind of their thing.
Yeah, Corona is also our thing.
Hey everybody, my name's Eric.
And I'm Elena.
And we are the co-hosts of the 2 out of 3 podcast.
Yep.
And we've come back together today to talk to you guys about our Patreon page.
Anyone who's familiar with the podcasting world knows that podcasts are mostly self-funded productions. Patreon is a way for us to connect with patrons who will help fund our productions with us.
So if you're watching this video on Patreon, you're already here, so go ahead and take a look around. If not, there are 2 different ways you can find us. You can go either to patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast or to 2 out of 3 podcast.com. That's patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast or 2 out of 3 podcast.com. Now back to the show.
Yep.
To our listeners who haven't kept up to date on Corona statistics, Iowa State has been in Ames has been in the top 3 of COVID cases in relationship to population size. And our administration is doing very poorly dealing with it. And people are frustrated and confused. It's not going so great. There was 1 week where the positive testing rate on campus was nearly 30%.
Wow.
So nearly 30, it was like 28.8% for a week. So 30% of the people who were tested on campus tested positive. There's one dorm that's set aside for people who live on campus who test positive. And apparently, I read a letter the other day. I didn't know this, but apparently if people test positive, they need to be taken over to this dorm, and they're taken over in just like white minivans or white vans. They're probably like 12 passenger or something.
Yeah.
And university employees are just in like makeshift hazmat suits.
I read that article or the letter that you sent to the family to read, or I guess to do with whatever we wanted to. But I read the letter and somehow it like wasn't surprising, or like the like I understand that parents' frustration and anger, but it just seems like no one knows what they're doing right now. Like everything is being made up on the fly. Part of me wishes that I had been smart enough to like think of this being a thing and then like come up with a plan and then like find some way to profit, which is not the best way to approach a pandemic. Or not even to profit, just to be like, hey, this is a guy who saw this coming, and be thought of as smart or prepared or something, which again isn't the best way to approach a thing like this. But then, where was I going? I'm distracted cleaning a filter from my thing. Anyways, I don't remember what it was about the article where I was like, or the letter where I was like, I don't know what you were expecting. Just the lack of preparedness, I guess. I don't know. I guess we could pull it back up if we wanted to.
Yeah, one of the big concerns, the football opener is in, what, like a week or something? I don't know. Do I look like I care about sports? But the football opener, Jack Trice, the stadium on campus, can hold like 40,000 people or something. And they decided that for this first football game, they were only, quote-unquote, only, going to allow 25,000 people into the stadium.
Wow.
But then the numbers came back that Ames, relative to population size, had some pretty high test numbers. And so then people were like, stop. Don't do the game with fans. And they held off on it so long and then finally called off allowing fans into the game. Then, of course, the athletics director was like, oh, well, now we were going to have a $17 million deficit because of already cut funding or cut attendance at games. But now the deficit's going to be like $30 million. And their solutions to fixing this deficit were athletics employees had taken a 10% pay cut. And they were also like, well, now the only thing left to do is cut some sports and cut all of the arts programs to make up for the lost revenue, which I think is problematic.
Interesting. Yeah. Heard that. I don't know. It's weird to try and comment on these things because, like, things have never happened before. To say again for people who didn't realize that yet. But, like, so, like with sports, college football has been, like, decisions have been made conference by conference. So the Big Ten decided they weren't going to play, and the Pac-12 decided they weren't going to play. But then the other big school conferences are playing. And now it sounds to like various amounts of fans. And now there's pressure being put on the Big Ten to play from different parents and players within the Big Ten, from fans around the Big Ten, and now from the President of the United States. And it's like,
America needs college football.
Yeah, well, America needs college football in swing states. But it's just like, I don't, there's this whole, like, there's this, I don't know, again, this is probably speaks more to me as a person than anything, but there's part of me that's like, I hope the Big Ten sticks to their guns and they were right. And to just like, I don't, it's so, I think part of the reason people are like pushing so hard, other than like economic and social and other reasons to be trying to push to open things back up, I think part of the reason is that this virus doesn't seem as dangerous as maybe other things would. Like if this were Ebola, people would be going crazy trying to actually follow the rules, or like something that had a super high death rate. And it's like, I don't know, the novelty of a virus that doesn't have a cure or a treatment wore off pretty quickly for those people who actually believed that it actually is a thing, which it is a thing. So I don't know. I don't know moving forward. I guess we're just waiting on a cure, a vaccine.
Yeah, I can only really speak to Ames because that's where I am. But people are really upset with the Iowa State administration because they were going to allow 25,000 fans in. There's a big party day before the beginning of the semester called 801, and they took like no steps to try and prevent that from happening. And then now they're using that as kind of like a scapegoat for like, well, it's not because the students are back on campus, it's because the students are partying off campus. Which may or may not be true, but actions could have been taken to prevent that. And there's a whole lot of pressure for faculty to offer in-person classes, which, like, we went online very suddenly in March, and you had all summer to prepare, and now all of a sudden it's like you've never offered an online class before, and you're just so confused. Like, we have the capability of going fully online, but they, as of right now...
That's not the college experience.
Yeah, as of right now, they have no plans to move things online.
Yeah. I wouldn't have done well in an online school. That's why I not only attended classes in person, but, like, lived on campus. But, like, there was a part of me a while ago that thought I might end up in another master's program, and that I would have been in a master's program right now, and I'm kind of glad I'm not in school right now. I'm also glad I don't have kids right now. Having to deal with this with kids would not be fun.
Yeah, because I very much understand wanting your classes to be in person and having the college experience and whatnot. Like, doing Zoom classes or WebEx meetings with your professors, like, it's not fun. But I'm willing to sacrifice some of my college experience if it means I still get somewhat of an education and people aren't getting sick.
Yeah. I will be happy when this is over. I went to a movie today. I don't think... It wasn't weird to be back in a theater or to be in a theater with, like, no people. Because... So AMC has taken, like, a 40%... They're only selling 40% of seats to movies. But then, like, there was only me and two other people at this screening anyways. Which, like, has been normal because when you go to as many movies as I do, you go to a lot of movies that don't have people watching the movie. But it wasn't weird to... So, like, that part wasn't weird, but there was some aspect of, like, being back in a movie theater after 6 months. That was, like, kind of weird.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently. She was like, oh, how are you doing? I was like, well, I mean, other than, like, the impending feeling that the world is ending, Like, I'm fine. And she was like, yeah, it's kind of... No one knows where we're going, and it may not be the end of the world, but it will be the end of the way we know some things in our lives.
Yeah. I was talking with Dad about masks and what that will look like after this is over. And I think that more people will choose to wear masks, but I think the vast majority of people will not wear masks once this is all over.
Yeah.
Just as a precaution for anything. There's I was surprised. I knew very little about the Spanish flu or the whatever else you want to call the flu pandemic from 1918. But to see pictures of people wearing masks from the 19 teens is just like a shocking thing to see, because I had never seen it before until the last couple months. And like, whoa, we didn't learn this part of history at all.
Nope.
And now, if this happens again, 100 years from now, people will be looking back. Look at all these people wearing masks. Look at all these people not wearing masks.
Yeah, one of my favorite, online comebacks or gotcha moments, someone was like, well, the last, the bubonic plague, that, we didn't need a cure for that. That went away on its own. And then someone responded and was like a third of Europe died.
Yeah, and it went away after 100 years.
Mm-hmm. I think we should be aiming for better than that.
Oh.
I don't think we should just be waiting for it to run its course. Because there are people... Which is
kind of where we're at right now.
That's kind of where we are at right now. Because there are people who are being affected pretty severely by this. I feel like if we have the means to help them or prevent it from happening to other people, we should use those.
Especially since this is affecting the most vulnerable parts of society more than other parts of society.
Mm-hmm.
So I have gotten information from different places just about the, I guess, racial disparities in COVID. And I heard a statistic that if specifically black people, African Americans, were immune to the COVID virus, black and African American people would die at a higher rate than any other race, even if they were immune to the COVID virus.
Yeah, which they're not, and they're disproportionately being affected. Because
it's people who don't have access to healthcare, don't have money to do whatever, are already in a lower standard of living, who are working in the quote-unquote essential jobs, which includes mostly service stuff, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and there's also bias in healthcare, but I mean that's a conversation for a different time.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the people who are yelling about, or in a lot of cases, I feel like you always have to provide the caveats, but there are people who are not affected and don't know people who have been affected by this, and who also feel like they personally won't be affected, or if they get the virus they will feel, or they won't die, basically. Which the quarterback for the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, made comments along those lines.
I've seen recently. Some of his comments. Was not a fan.
Yeah. But to be fair, that's kind of where I was at the start of this. Also, to be fair, I already wasn't coming into contact with people anyways, so I wasn't super worried at the time in March and April about passing the virus on. But then once other people seemed to stop caring about it, then I was like, well, I need to start caring about this for myself. But yeah, it's the being able to step outside of yourself and be concerned about people around you. John Green had a quote on his podcast. I need to pull it up so that I say it right again. But Hank and John Green, the Vlog Brothers, bring them back into this. They have a podcast every week. And they were talking, as they often do, about coronavirus now. And John Green was talking about other people, like, wanting to, quote-unquote, live their life or, like, do their thing. And he was like, you do you until you're near me. Then you do us. And then I was talking with another friend about that quote, and he was like, maybe it becomes actually you do you until you're near me, then we do us. Which, like, either way, the point is that you are not, like, a bubble unto yourself. What you do has effects on other people, which should be even more apparent in the world we live in right now.
Yeah, because and
you can't just shut it off either.
Like you, I'm not incredibly worried about what would happen to me if I contracted COVID. Because, I mean, I'm not, like, super at risk in any category, I don't think. But I interact now with so many people for the census, and, like, I'm required to wear a mask. I wear my mask. Try and stand 6 feet apart from people. Like, I'm still around a lot of people. I still have in-person classes. My roommates, I think they're both at risk. So, like, I know I would probably be fine. I guess we still don't know the long-term health impacts.
Yeah.
But there's such a high chance that I would get someone close to me so much more sick than I would be. I don't want to be responsible for that.
Yeah. So, like, even going back to the football stuff, apparently there have been a lot of, I guess especially in the Big Ten, players who have contracted COVID who then have, like, inflamed hearts, or, like, their heart muscle gets inflamed. And it's like, that's bigger than just COVID. That's a pretty big deal. I think that's a pretty big deal. Mm-hmm. And I think we're not focusing on other things. And you're right that we don't know in the future what this will look like for people as they come back. Where was I reading this article? I don't remember if it might have been in the Minneapolis paper, but they interviewed a woman who had contracted COVID, and, like, months ago, like, almost towards the start in March or April, and she in, like, July or August, was still, like, even though she didn't have the virus anymore, was still trying to recover from the effects of having had the virus. Like, her respiratory stuff was still not anywhere close to peak or even, like, normal. And then she said that her, like, mental capacity was also severely dropped after, like, the extreme bout and being in the hospital and on a ventilator and stuff. And she was an ASL interpreter, and she, like, couldn't remember sign language. Like, her job for decades was being an ASL interpreter, and she couldn't remember sign language, or a lot of sign language. So it's like, obviously, like, a lot of this is anecdotal, but I think even the anecdotal stuff in this case should be concerning.
Mm-hmm. But haven't you heard it's just the flu?
And even then, people die from the flu. Which, I mean, I haven't had a flu shot since 2011. So I guess I'm one to talk. I don't really like shots, which, when the time comes, I guess I'll be getting it no matter what.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people being concerned about the potential vaccines that are in the works, and they feel like they're being rushed. Because vaccines aren't normally produced at such a quick rate. However, it's like the entire world working on this vaccine at once, which I don't think is common in the medical community.
Yeah, but even then, I think they're still following whatever the protocol is, protocols are, whatever the proper verb tense is. Because from the beginning of this, the estimate was winter, late winter, at the very earliest for a vaccine to come out, and we're still tracking to late winter at the very earliest, or like not late winter, late in the year, which would be early winter, etc., etc. The end of this year at the very earliest, and probably not till next year, which that's the way it's tracking.
But people still feel that it's being rushed because it is, I mean, quick for a vaccine.
Yeah. Plus this certain strain of virus is one that we didn't have vaccines for when the SARS is it a pandemic when in any case when SARS was a thing in 2000 whatever 3 something like that was contained rather quickly, and development on a vaccine at that time was shelved for that type of virus, the coronavirus family, I guess, in general. And I think in a lot of cases people were expecting the next pandemic to be a flu, not to be something different. Because I've watched a couple videos from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, or even I just read a sci-fi book where someone weaponized the flu, but the expectation I think was that it was going to be another type of flu.
I started watching Doomsday Preppers, which is a show on some network where people...
TLC.
I don't know if it is TLC. I'll Google it. Anyways, it's this show where people who are predicting that the world is going to end or there's going to be some catastrophic event, they're preparing for it. Doomsday Preppers. It aired on National Geographic.
Nat Geo. Nice.
Yeah,
Does that mean is it on Disney Plus? Are you watching it on Disney Plus?
I was watching it on... Where was I watching it? Hulu, maybe? I don't remember. But these people, they build these giant bunkers, or they're, stockpiling all their food and weapons, or they're doing these training exercises to learn how to get from coast to coast on a tank of gas or whatever. And someone in that show thought that the next pandemic, end-of-the-world type situation was going to be smallpox.
Interesting. Even though we already have a cure for smallpox?
Apparently.
Do we have a cure for smallpox?
I
guess I say that, right? We have a vaccine for smallpox.
But most people don't have the vaccine because it's more or less been eradicated.
Interesting.
So people who were, born... Oh, what is it? People who were born in, Hawaii or something, or are significantly older than us, they have the vaccine, but you and I wouldn't have the vaccine. I don't know, we talked about it in biology once. People who join the military and are going to go abroad, I think they need to get the smallpox vaccine. So, it still is a thing.
Yeah, because I think there's potential for other places in the world to be hot with that.
Yeah, but according to the one person on Doomsday Preppers, that's the next pandemic.
Doomsday Preppers is not on Disney Plus. Rogue Trip is from National Geographic, whatever that is.
Yeah, so it was probably Hulu that we were watching it. Oh, it's on Netflix. Apparently I was watching it on Netflix. I don't know.
Not that it really matters.
It doesn't matter at all.
This doesn't seem like that type of thing, though.
The routine smallpox vaccination among the American public stopped in 1972. So people who were born before 72, or people who are born places other than the U.S.
Interesting.
Or there are exceptions. I know we talked about this in biology once, but that was 5 years ago.
Very interesting. That's kind of surprising to me. But I guess it's like a cost-benefit ratio. But then again, if smallpox were to become a thing again, I think then you just produce the vaccine and get it out to people.
Because I'm sure I'm sure it's able to be created on a larger scale. Not like the most quickly, but I mean, the vaccine is known.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know how any of that works. I never had any plans on going into any sort of a medical field. Not for me.
It says, I'm on Wikipedia right now, so take it with a grain of salt. But a lot of the, they used to have the virus, so you could, they had the virus contained, so you could make the vaccine, or however vaccines work. And a lot of those have been destroyed. So according to Wikipedia, the only known stocks of the smallpox virus are in the CDC State Research Center of Virology and Biotechnology. That one's in Russia, so in the U.S. and Russia. Interesting.
It might still be active in the world, though. I don't know. I'm not gonna try researching while we're recording. So.
Yeah, that's a topic for later, but smallpox probably will not make, in my not a biology major opinion, smallpox will probably not make a major comeback. We have other things to deal with.
I wonder how immunity works with that. 'Cause if parts of the world that experienced smallpox, for example, how immunity passes down. 'Cause I think so with the plague, if your ancestors survived the plague, I think you already have some built-in immunity. Or for us siblings, I think since mom had meningitis, we have some immunity built up for meningitis that was passed down. But I wonder if at a certain point, since you have so many ancestors coming through, if it just sort of weakens and weakens with every passing generation. If you're not experiencing it again and again.
I don't know. I'm not a biologist.
Have you ever seen the movie Contagion?
I have not.
I just watched it recently, and it came out 10 years ago, and it's kind of about what we're going through right now, a dramatized version of what a pandemic could look like. And it was interesting to see what someone 10 years ago thought would happen, because it's so there's watching things during the movie that happened that did happen, and watching things that happened during the movie that most certainly did not happen. But it's so for starters, the virus in Contagion is much deadlier than what we're going through right now, so that I think affects some of the story versus reality. But there's they lock the president down right away. It's that most certainly did not happen. Or they and take things seriously very quickly, which did not happen either. But then there are things there's a character in the movie who promotes a cure that isn't really a cure for his own financial benefit. And it's I don't know how specifically that's happening, but there are definitely people promoting cures that aren't cures right now. So that was a real thing. Or just there were things in the movie where there was looting very quickly, and part of the movie is based in the Minneapolis area, and it's that's kind of weird. If there had been looting based on the virus, how would that have been reacted to? But another part that was not reality was they had a vaccine in 4 months, and then the head researcher working on the vaccine gave herself this test vaccine. It's that's not a thing that's going to happen for real.
That's not a thing that happens.
But then one of the things that I'm curious about, and again, since it was more severe in the movie, I don't know how realistic this will be, but when they had a vaccine that was ready to be mass produced, then they had a lottery for everyone in the country of days of birth. And then so they did it a draft, a military draft, where they pulled numbers, and then when your date came up, like in order, that's when you were able to get the vaccine. So you couldn't get the vaccine until your day came up and like in order, as a way to like be able to produce the vaccine and get it out to people. So I'm curious, once a vaccine is viable and is mass produced, what that will look like in its distribution.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of distribution of a vaccine. However, I don't think we would do draft style.
And that's like, were COVID that severe, maybe we would. But in this case, I think there are a lot of people who aren't going to get it anyways. And part of me, I think I'm not going to get it immediately, because like, I kind of want to see what happens once people get the vaccine first. Just so like, and part of me is like, if I am like a person who, if I were to get the virus, would probably survive having the virus, then part of me is like, maybe people who are more vulnerable should be getting the vaccine first, instead of me, who is seemingly an able-bodied person. As far as I know, I'm an able-bodied person.
I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows what's happening right now.
It's like the tagline for the last 5 years. That's what that part of the history books will read. No one really knew what was going on. I guess it's kind of all of history, but seemingly it feels like you don't necessarily know that in the present, as you're not as aware of that as we are right now.
Yeah, like now it's very clear that we're living through quite a few large things.
Yeah, all at once, all kind of feeding off of each other.
Yeah, Mom at one point, I don't remember what I told her. I told Mom something, and Mom was like, that's 2020 for you. Worst year I've ever known.
Personally, I don't think that's true, but globally, I think that's true. It's been more of like a frustration, personally, I guess.
Oh,
anything.
I told Mom that because Iowa got hit with like a land hurricane.
What?
Have you heard this yet?
I think I remember hearing it from you, but I don't know what the details are.
So pretty much all of central Iowa got hit with a derecho, which is a specific type of storm.
A right?
Thank you. Do you speak Spanish?
Is that actually...
Derecho.
Is it literally the Spanish word for right? They're using it for a storm?
Eric, it's been so long since I've taken Spanish.
I wonder what the etymology is of that, how that came to be.
But
anyways,
there are very specific definitions that a storm has to hit. It was basically the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane going through Iowa. So the storm just like came out of nowhere in South Dakota and just like tore through Iowa, the entire state, tore through part of Illinois, and then finally stopped in Indiana. But it was bad. All of Ames didn't have power. We were some of the first people to get power back, and our power was out for like 26 hours. And a lot of people, it took over a week for them to get their power back. People in eastern Iowa, like in Marshalltown, so like eastern Iowa, they were out of power for at least a week, like the vast majority of the city. The early estimates were that 10 million acres of crops had been destroyed because the winds just like flattened them. So if you see price increases on like corn, soybeans, or anything with soy, or like eggs, it's because Iowa is one of the number one one of, if not the number one producer for a lot of those things. Just got absolutely destroyed by a storm.
Interesting. Corn seems to be rather plentiful right now, at least up here.
Yeah, I've been down in Des Moines these past couple days, and Ames, I mean, it took a while, but it's more or less back to normal. But these past couple days, I've been back down in Des Moines. It's been nearly a month since the storm, and there are still just, like, trees everywhere. Just, like, lining the sides of the roads. There are some places you can't get through on the sidewalks because there are just, like, trees that I think someone was probably supposed to come pick up at some point. I don't know why they're still there.
Government work.
That's what I do.
I've done that before. Wasn't really my thing. At least not the jobs I had.
I'm enjoying my job, except yesterday I had someone yell at me because I'm required to ask the questions the way they appear on my screen. And I read out loud, "Are you male or female?" And they got very mad because they were very clearly one of them. It's like, I know. I mean, that's what I would have said for you. Like, however, I'm not allowed to assume. I have to go off your answers.
I'm required by law. I did the census, I don't know, a couple months ago, but it was like only 4 questions for me. Is that normal?
I mean, I wouldn't call that amount of questions normal. But I mean, we ask, like, how many people live in this household, birthdays or ages, sex, like, do you own this place or do you rent it? Which one of the people in this household owns or rents it? Race. That's, like, the big thing. Or the big things. There are some supplementary questions in there, like, can I get your phone number?
Oh, I wouldn't think of that as a question. But I wonder if it was just like 4 numbers and then like letters as like sub-questions.
Yeah, if you do
Or,
it
like, along those
online,
lines.
I did it online several months ago. And I got through it fairly quickly. It takes longer if someone comes to your house because they have to read the question to you.
Yeah, it just happened here a couple days ago.
Yeah,
For the people next door, because the guy couldn't get an answer from anyone at the house next door, and apparently it's been empty for months. So one of the people here was like, had to take some sort of an oath that they could speak to the property next door, and then had to answer the questions as they were read, etc., etc.
Yeah, so to our 6 listeners, if you haven't done the census already, you can do it online or over the phone. Otherwise, you will probably be seeing an enumerator at your door sometime within the next couple months. Please don't yell at them. I've been yelled at a handful of times. They're just doing their job. The questions may seem ridiculous, but the enumerators have no control over that.
Yeah, there are a lot of times where the person who is like the face of the thing but has no authority is the person who gets yelled at. You're just like, why?
Yeah, I have no authority over the questions that I read you. I have to read them. It is required for you to fill out the census.
What happens if you don't?
I don't know what the punishment is if you don't, but it is technically required by law. So it's required by law that it's...
Constitution.
Yeah, it's required by the Constitution that it's done, and that it's also required that people participate in it. If you get some phone calls from someone, that's another thing. There are some places where we're, like, I guess I'll speak for myself, there are some places where it's difficult to get in contact with the person who lived there on census day, because it's a college town, people are moving in and out of apartments all the time. So sometimes you'll get a phone call, and they'll read you this long paragraph about why we're operating, like, under what authority are we operating. I've had quite a few people hang up on me. It's like, okay.
You have to call people too, as well as going out?
Yeah.
Oh, that would not be the job for me.
So if I can't contact someone at their place and like none of their neighbors are around to answer the questions for them, sometimes I get phone numbers that I can try and call. Not all houses, but some of them.
Not for me. I wonder if that's what the guy was doing, because I definitely saw him in his car after the fact, and he was on his phone, so I wonder if he was calling people.
Could have been. Or he could have been calling a supervisor.
Or if he was making a dinner unboxing video.
I feel like you're making fun of me.